So today I'm at the Princeton Jetty in Half Moon Bay, and this is a popular surfing spot. I may go out and surf, but first I want to paint some waves. It's kind of half light today, a little bit hazy. So I'm just going to set up and experiment with paint application. Alright, so I'm painting on an 11 by 22 inch panel here, panorama. I've got my usual palette of colors, but I do have a guest color here. This is Cobalt Teal by Gamblin. Got extra titanium white, and then also some liquid impasto in case I want to, put down some thicker passages. I've also got liquid original. I do like that there's some like glare on the waves, like bits of sparkle. I'm not sure if I'll include that, but mainly this is just an exercise in experimenting with paint application and color. Alright, so I'm working with a high horizon today, and I used a straight edge that I carry with me. It's really difficult to get a straight line, as you guys probably know, so I do carry the straight edge. I'm going to place one wave right here on the top third. That'll be the main focus. And then maybe a little broken wave here, and some white water, where the water meets the sand. So that's my starting idea, and we'll see what happens. So I'm going to start with the sky color, and I'm using ultramarine, titanium white, and a touch of burnt sienna to gray it down. As I mentioned before, I like to use complements to gray down colors. So the complement of blue is orange, and burnt sienna is sort of an orange color. So that will gray down the blue, adding some liquid. And these colors are going to be adjusted. This is just the first pass, obviously. I like to have sort of active brushwork in the sky and some transparency. Kind of creates a luminous effect. All right, next I'm mixing up a color for the water, and I'm using ultramarine, cadmium yellow medium, and a touch of alizarin crimson. And this color here is the sky color, so I'm mixing into the sky color and comparing values here. As you can see, there's a value shift from the sky to the water. Again, keeping in mind that the white water is the lightest portion of the painting, so I'm going to really want that to stand out. Wave paintings are really fun because they are sort of abstract paintings, and you could really play around with shapes and paint application. One thing I used to do in the past was I would make the breaking waves way too big. If you look out here, even though these are decent sized waves, the breaking wave is actually pretty small in comparison to the overall scene. So I always try to focus on scale and make sure that I'm keeping things somewhat realistic. Okay, in here we've got a lot of white water in here, so I'm going to mix up a color for that. All right, so I'm going to use titanium white, ultramarine blue, and a bit of this green mixture here. That's pretty dark, so I'm adding a little bit of white into the mix, just mixing directly on the panel here. Next, I'm just using straight titanium white and whatever color is in my brush to sort of lightly establish the whitewater patterns. All right, so I know I want a wave here. And then this one, I don't know, I'd like to have maybe I'll have a bit of wave there. Maybe I'll leave an area in here that's dark and then an area over here that's dark. And there's white water right here. Maybe a little bit over here. And then also right along the shoreline. All right, that water's getting close. All right, so mixing a color for the sand here using a bit of burnt umber that was just left over on my palette that I was experimenting with on my last painting. Titanium white and a bit of yellow ochre. All right, adding just a touch of dioxazine purple in here for the portion of the sand where it meets the water. Sort of darker right along the water line. So at this point, I'm just kind of loading the brush, then making a stroke, load the brush, make a stroke, that sort of thing. I'm using a number 8 natural bristle flat, which holds a lot of paint. And at this point, I'm not mixing in liquid. I've decided just to go without medium. It's just paint straight out of the tube. All right, so the waves are starting to get backlit, so there's a bit of shadow on the white water. So I started applying a bit of titanium white with ultramarine blue, and I'm just using loaded strokes, and I'm trying to go in both directions, horizontal and vertical. Just keep some variety in there. All right, for the water beyond the waves, I'm gonna lighten it up a bit with titanium white, some of this water mixture that I already made, and then adding a little bit of ultramarine blue. Because I want to suggest the reflected sky color. Keeping an eye on value here. I want to make sure that the color of the water here, or the value of the water, is darker than the white water. I do want to leave some of the orange tone shining through, especially around the breaking waves. Even though there isn't really any orange in the scene, having those little bits of orange popping through makes the scene seem a little bit more luminous. All right, so at the top of the breaking waves, I'm noticing some blue-green, so I'm using a little bit of cobalt teal and titanium white to suggest those sort of aqua bits. They're up along the top here, sort of cool, little nice cool blue-green, and there's some in here as well in these waves that are breaking closer to shore. When there's a wave breaking, right before it, there is a reflection of the broken wave. So I'm going to add that in. All right, so in some of the water here, some of the dark water in front of the waves, I'm noticing kind of a purple tone. So I've added a little bit of dioxazine purple and alizarin crimson into this sort of gray mixture here. And I've got a little bit of titanium white as well. As I mentioned before, I'm like always surprised at how much red is in the seawater. When the wave rises up, there is some glare. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to capture that, but I think I'll try. All right, so here is what I finished up with. And as I mentioned, I was experimenting with paint application or brush strokes. I was using shorter loaded brush strokes today. Typically when I paint a scene like this, I'll use long sweeping strokes to create a sense of motion. But I do think it's a good idea to, you know, experiment once in a while and not get caught in a rut. I do think that I like the longer sweeping strokes, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. But there's some things that really worked out in this painting that normally I struggle with. And number one, that's, you know, creating a sense of glare. And what I did was I just used titanium white with a touch of cadmium yellow lemon. All right, so let's take a close look so you can actually see what the paint application looks like. You know, it's just up close, you know, it doesn't necessarily read as glare. But once you get back from it, it actually does. So here's an example from a while back where I used long sweeping strokes instead of the shorter strokes. All right, and here is a close-up. I feel like the longer sweeping strokes does create a nice sense of motion. And then also it's nice to juxtapose those sweeping strokes with the more, you know, loaded, shorter strokes in the white water. All right, so hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. Got a bunch of extra videos on there, material list, that sort of thing. So if that sounds interesting, check it out. Other than that, stay creative, and I'll see you guys in the next video.